But this is one that I haven't heard yet, and I think it's basically the same situation, but there's a few different what-ifs. And that is, what if Larry Eustachy would have been hired to coach the Louisville basketball program? For those who don't really know, and I don't think we've ever had any official confirmation, but anybody around U of L at the time of Denny Crum's retirement will tell you that Larry Eustachy was one of the top candidates. And not to say Larry Eustachy's had a bad coaching career, because he hasn't, but he's not Rick Pitino, and we know that, right? I mean, that goes without saying. And I guess at the time of Denny Crum's retirement, Eustachy was viewed as, an interesting candidate because he'd had some success. He's from the West Coast, and I'm pretty sure he and Tom Jurich know each other pretty well. But during that time, I guess it was, he was at Iowa State during the time that Denny Crum stepped down and Rick Pitino took over. And, of course, he had a falling out there at Iowa State in 2003, was, basically caught partying and hanging out on campus with some of the college girls, and just ended up being sort of a sticky situation. Now, for what it's worth, I actually think Larry Eustachy is a really good coach. He's gone on to Colorado. After Iowa State, he spent some time at Southern Miss. They had some success, and then now he's been at Colorado State since 2012, and I think he's taken him to the tournament at least 2 times since he's been there. A good coach, but my goodness, he is not Rick Pitino. And who's to say he wouldn't have had some success, but I don't think he would have. I don't think he would have had the success that Rick Pitino has had. And also, that was such a crucial hire because, Denny Crum had U of L as the team of the 80s, and they won a couple of national championships, 1980 and 1986. And in the 90s, they weren't bad, but it wasn't as good as the 80s. And towards the end of his career, the end of the 90s, they'd kind of fallen off a little bit. And Louisville basketball as a whole still had a truckload of tradition, but it lost a little bit of luster. It was no longer looked at as one of the, maybe of all time it was, but it was no longer looked at in a 10-year period as one of the premier programs in the country. And it was a big hire. And Tom Jurich made the great hire, obviously, with Rick Pitino. But so not only is it what if Larry Eustachy had taken over, it's also what if Rick Pitino had gone to Michigan. And I felt like an idiot when this first came up because it was right around the time that Louisville won their championship in 2013. There, every columnist, everybody out there was writing stories about Rick Pitino, and one of those stories happened to be that he was mulling over the opportunity to either take over at Michigan or Louisville, and obviously, as you know, he ended up choosing Louisville. But it's hard to imagine where the program would have been had Rick Pitino not been hired. And I'm not trying to say that Rick Pitino is the only reason Louisville basketball is relevant right now. He obviously has had a lot to do with it, and he won a national title, a couple of Final Fours, a lot of success. And who's to say that Tom Jurich couldn't have hired somebody else, and they would have gone on to have some success because the program is much bigger than just Rick Pitino, but the timing was so crucial. And not only was it nice to have a coach who is a proven winner, but Rick Pitino kind of made Louisville attractive in its own right at that time because when he came back into college basketball, things didn't work out in Boston. We know that. But he was still, he hadn't lost all of his luster as far as being the rock star of college basketball. I don't mean rock star in regards to his personality. I just mean he was a star. The teams that run that he had at Kentucky right before he went to Boston was unreal. The amount of talent he had. And, they won a championship at Kentucky in 98 based off of what Pitino had built. I don't want to say that that's his championship, but that was his team. That team was together.